Okay. Samantha, welcome to the podcast. I am going to have you introduce yourself in just a moment. But before I have you introduce yourself, what I want to have everybody listening really know about you is that Samantha is a ninja working mom. She is doing lots of things and she is losing a lot of weight as she's doing it. So I cannot wait for you to tell us about yourself, share where you have been, and tell us your story with your career, your kids, and where you started out on the scale.
All right. Well, I'm Samantha. I am in my mid 30s. I have two
Mm-hmm.
elementary school kids. My youngest just started kindergarten this year, so it's been a pretty big milestone year for my family. Um, I work full time for a general contractor, but I'm in IT, and kind of worked my way all around the company and ended up in
Mm-hmm.
IT, really like right before the pandemic. And with that, I also started working from home. So I've been working from home for about 5 years. And I think that that had a lot to do with my weight loss journey or my
Mm.
weight gain journey that turned into
Ah,
my weight
right.
loss journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then I also have big hobbies. I like to make crafts. I like to work with my hands and color. It sounds silly, but coloring is one of those things that
Yeah.
keeps me calm. Like when they started coming out with those adult coloring books, I jumped on that train real fast because it keeps
Yeah.
me calm and kind of eases my own anxieties.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, so I do. I make a lot of crafts, and that is something that I really also enjoy doing with my kids. Is anything art related.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
so
so good. Yeah.
yeah, so I guess last year, right around this time, I had my annual physical, and it was kind of looking in the
Mm.
mirror.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was at my heaviest,
Yeah.
or right
Yeah.
very, very close to my heaviest. And
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to do something about it, and I kept telling myself, let's do something about it. Let's do something about it. And motivation was not necessarily where it should have been. Um, and anything that I tried, which, I didn't really try that much to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I would exercise and then I wouldn't lose weight. And then I'd be like, okay, well, I'm not going to exercise anymore. This isn't working.
Right.
And things like that. But when I went into my annual physical, my doctor said, you need to lose weight.
Mm.
She was like, you have crossed over into, quote unquote obese.
Right.
Um, that was it was like looking in the mirror and really hearing what I needed to hear. Hearing it from
Right.
someone else straight to my
Right.
face was very honest.
Oh, yeah.
So that kind of started it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was not very careful, but I was pretty
Mm-hmm.
careful with what I was eating,
Yeah.
and lifestyle changes that I could make towards the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And then I found out about this group,
Mm-hmm.
and everything kind
Yeah.
of shifted in, gosh, June.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, you know, that moment that, and I think that so many of us have felt that. I remember I used to feel like that. I would look in the mirror, like my actual mirror, and be like, I should do something about this. Or
Right.
like, I should just lose a little bit of weight. Like, I need to do something. I should do something. And I want to do something. But there was just a gap between that, like, I should do something with, and actually going out and doing it. What do you
Yeah.
think it was? Like, you went to this annual visit and your physician was like, listen, you really do need to do something. What was it in that moment that flipped a switch for you that you were like, okay, this
I
is
think
real?
I think it was the word obese.
Oh.
I think there was
Mm.
that. And also, I kind of started, um, I realized when I wanted to get my COVID shot, I was like, I can
Yeah.
get it earlier than everybody else because I'm
Right.
overweight.
Right.
Which was great at the time, but at the same time, I'm
Right.
like, I don't want this to be my limiting factor.
Mm.
I don't want this to be my, whatever they call it, that
Yeah, like
is
your
the
whole
reason for
story.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it was kind of the kick in the butt that I needed.
Yeah, yeah. When you were saying that you've been working from home for about 5 years now, when you think about like your relationship with that number on the scale, the weight, have you felt like weight loss or weight gain rather has been a struggle for you forever since you were a child? Or do you feel like it was just the last 5 years being at home that it really became a problem?
I would say I was always, well, I grew up in gymnastics. So
Hmm.
there was a lot of body talk.
Mm,
What do you look like? What is your muscle composition? Things like that. And then, I got too tall. So, and
yeah.
my body started developing, and that is
Hmm.
not what you really want in a gymnast body. So,
Mm,
by the time I was really into puberty, um, my body changed, but also I didn't have good skills as far as um, eating and healthy habits and really
hmm.
exercising because I didn't know what an appropriate amount of exercise was.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
prior to that, it was just that's all I did. I could eat anything I wanted
Yeah.
because I was exercising 5 days a week.
Right.
And like intense exercise, especially for a kid.
Yes. Yeah.
But through middle school and high school, I was somewhat thin, but
Hmm.
it was very easy for me to put on weight. College
Hmm.
definitely put on more weight.
Hmm.
Um, and then I think I got married right out of college.
Hmm.
Um, and we both really like food,
Yeah.
but my husband likes exercise a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
So, I kind of the weight
Yeah.
gain
Yeah.
persisted, I would say. And then
Right.
um I had my first kid
Hmm.
and I thought pregnancy was the worst thing in the world. Like I did
Yeah.
not feel good. I was
Yeah.
just it was nausea
Yeah.
all the time for like
Yeah.
really the first 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
Um and I lost a lot of weight while I was pregnant. And that was
Hmm.
like the first time where I was like, huh, look at this. Like
Mm.
it's been a long time since I've lost weight,
Right.
or gained
And it's
so
interesting
little,
because like
especially.
some people like during pregnancy they will gain so much weight in pregnancy
Yep.
and they have a tough time losing it. And what's interesting because as an OBGYN you see it happen both ways, and I think
Hmm.
that the effect that pregnancy has on our body and then our mind, it's like it's just so interesting what happens after,
Yes.
right? So yeah, so share what happened with you after.
Yeah. So, I mean, really towards the end of my first pregnancy, that was the first time in my life that I really remember thinking, like, I like my body. I'm happy in my
Mm,
body. I felt
yeah.
very womanly, very
Yeah.
fulfilled. I had a big giant belly, but like,
Yeah.
I felt
Yeah.
like this was what it was supposed to be. And
Yeah.
even though I had a big giant belly, like I felt thin. I didn't
Yeah.
feel heavy.
Right.
And then after I had him, I felt a little squishy, but
Right.
that happens. And
Hmm.
um, I wouldn't say I gained a whole bunch of weight between that pregnancy and
Hmm.
my second one, which is my last baby. I only have 2 kids.
Yeah.
But um, I noticed changes in my body. Like my hips
Hmm.
were wider, my boobs were bigger, just things
Yeah.
like that I wasn't quite used to.
Right.
Um, and then with my second, um, I had a very similar reaction to the pregnancy where I was
Hmm.
very sick, lost
Hmm.
weight,
Hmm.
really came out of the hospital like weighing as much as I did before I was pregnant. So
Right.
kind of great, but also very shifted in
Yeah.
the way that my body was looking.
Right.
Um, but and I nursed him after. I didn't
Hmm.
really nurse my first one.
Yeah.
But I kind of realized when I was breastfeeding how many calories I was burning by doing
Right.
that. And
Right.
so I didn't really gain weight right away. But
Right.
then when that
Yeah.
journey stopped, boy, those pounds came on fast.
Oh, yeah.
And I had
Hmm.
kind of been warned about it. And I
Hmm.
was like, no, that didn't happen last time. Like,
Right.
this will be fine. And then
Yeah.
they just kept coming on.
Okay.
It just kept going.
Right.
And it really brought me to where I am now.
Yeah. When
So
you think about like how much weight would you say you gained in terms of like so you stopped nursing and then all
mhm.
of a sudden, or not all of a sudden, it probably crept on and
Yeah,
it
it's
just
crept
wasn't
on.
stopping. Was it just like a few pounds? Was it like 10, 20, 30, 40 pounds? Like how did you start to feel like okay, this is just creeping on, it's becoming a problem?
I would say it was probably 25 to 30.
Yeah.
And that was probably like right at the beginning of the pandemic when I was like,
Mhm.
oh,
Yeah.
this isn't how I want to be.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic also didn't help. Like
Yes.
my anxiety really just kept me inside. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't want to socialize. I don't even want to
Yep.
socially distance. Like I just want to like
Yes.
shut down in my own
Right.
home and not
Right.
move and eat
Yeah.
all the food.
And eat all the food. And I think what you're sharing, it's like such a common story that I hear so often. It's people have gained weight during COVID because of exactly what you're describing. You stay at home and there's like not as much to do. So very naturally, we're like, let's just eat, we can scroll, we can watch TV. I mean, we can like stream all the shows and the movies now. And
Hmm.
not surprisingly, a lot of people gained weight during COVID.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. And so when you think about like that moment, what do you think was the struggle for you to lose weight before coaching? So one was like you already shared like, okay, I know I need to do something,
Hmm.
but you weren't doing anything. What was it that was a struggle for you?
I think that part of it is there's so many options of things to do that you want to do
Mm-hmm.
everything all at once.
Mm,
So, be like, okay, well, I'm gonna, as an example, like I'm not gonna drink wine during the week, but also I'm gonna exercise every day this week,
right.
and I'm gonna walk the kids to school, and I'm gonna do,
Right.
eat vegetarian Monday through Friday. And it's
Right.
like,
Right.
okay, so I just listed off four things, but like realistically, how many of those things am I gonna do every day
Yeah.
for 5 days?
Right.
So that
Yeah.
was it was almost like information overload. Um,
Yes.
and I really had a hard time finding things that would fit in with my family life.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
think that that is something that appeals to me about the process that we're going through now is that
Yeah.
it just, I eat when I'm hungry
Yeah.
and it doesn't really matter
Yeah.
what everybody else is doing. So,
That's right. Yeah.
um, that was a big thing for me is,
Yeah.
how is it going to fit in? If my husband opens a
Right.
bottle of wine, do I have to drink that bottle of wine also? Like, do I have to participate
Right.
in this?
Right.
And now I
Yeah.
kind of just don't care as much. I'm
Right.
still participating in the wine, but
I mean,
you know,
yeah, yeah, and I think that what one of the things that you're talking about, which I think is so common, is this idea that when there is information overload. If you Google or look up weight loss and how to lose weight, you will see
yes,
so many options.
it's
There's counting
overwhelming.
points and calories, and you should just if you just exercise, and some of those things will work, right? If you
Yeah.
counted the points forever or the calories, or you exercise like crazy, you will lose weight,
Yep.
but then you have to also maintain that forever. And then I think it's very normal and natural when we feel overwhelmed, which I've shared on the podcast recently. What we do is we eventually quit or we hide because it just is exhausting for our brain to be like, it's too many options to even choose from. So, like when you think about how it used to be for you before, and we'll talk about what we're doing now together. Just first, can you just first share how did you even discover Unstoppable, and what was it that made you decide this out of all the options, because there's so many, that this was the one for you?
I think I discovered Unstoppable actually from like a Facebook group
Mm-hmm.
post from our town.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started following you from there. And I think I
Mm-hmm.
followed you for several months.
Mm.
Um, and then you came out with a podcast, and I was listening to the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were like 3 episodes into the podcast, and you were like, go to my website and check this
Mm-hmm.
out. And I was like, well, it doesn't hurt me to go to a website and check something out. And then
Yeah.
immediately we had our phone call.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
things moved very quickly from there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was ultimately it was like Facebook and following you on Instagram, like all the social medias,
Yeah.
all the things I shouldn't be scrolling but do.
Yeah. But scrolling,
Yeah.
So like when you think about all the options that were available, what do you think it was about? I think we had a consult call. What was
Hmm.
it, do you think, on that call that there was a part of you that felt like, okay, this is the right thing for me? Because as you know, there's so many options out there. What was it that was like, you know what, this is it?
Um, I felt very comfortable. I
Mm-hmm.
think that that was a lot of it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that the fact that we have a weekly call is
Mm-hmm.
incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
I know that I need to hold myself accountable, but
Yeah.
coming into a weekly call and either feeling great about myself for that week or potentially down on myself or embarrassed because of something that I did, I think that
Right.
that's kind of it goes back to that like my annual
Yes.
physical last year. I'm looking in the
Right.
mirror and I'm having somebody tell me back, like, you know what, it's
Yes.
okay that you didn't lose weight
Yes.
this week and this is why.
Yeah.
Or how do you think you could have done better? Or what do you want to
Right.
change? I think that I do very well with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so having a group of people to discuss that with,
Mm-hmm.
not a huge group, but just anybody that's
Yeah.
not just like me looking in a mirror
Yes.
is huge.
Yeah. And I think kind of what you're speaking to is just like the intimate nature of what the Unstoppable group is. It's a
Yes.
very intimate room. And I still remember somebody else was getting coached and how much it resonated with you when we
Oh yeah.
were talking about emotions and the thoughts and experiences of the other women in this room and how you get to just take it through the filter of your brain, even though everyone is different, right? Like in
Yeah.
this room, we're all unique and we all have come in with a different lived experience. But you were really taking away a lot from the coaching that other people were getting. What do you think about that?
Well, I'm a very emotional person, as you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a crier. But I think that my entire life I've done a really, really good job of learning from other people and kind of
Mm-hmm.
absorbing the experiences that other people go through as well. So
Yeah.
I like that in our coaching, I guess we call them sessions,
Yeah.
or in our chats that we have online. I like being able to sit back and watch other people go through it as well, because it may not have
Yes.
been something that I can put into words, but I can
Exactly.
understand what they're going through and I can learn from it. Um,
Yeah.
and I could choose whether that's something that I want to impact my life or not, or something
Mm-hmm.
that I want to implement.
Yeah.
But being able to see other people going through it and knowing
Yeah.
you're not alone, I think is also
Yeah.
very helpful.
Yeah. And I think, that's actually, I've been really thinking a lot about what is it about this intimate group that I love so much. And what we do a lot in our weekly coaching calls is we validate and normalize our humanness.
Hmm.
Right. And I think that when we get to witness somebody else also like validating and normalizing their humanness, I think it just expands and grows our capacity to maybe I can offer this to myself too. Because
Hmm.
when somebody else is getting coached and you can see that they're being hard on themselves, you can see their inner critic coming out, and I can't believe that I did this thing, and you hear the judgment and the criticism, it's so much easier to see with someone else like, oh, like they're being so hard on themselves. And probably when you see the coaching, you get to start asking yourself, wait a second, I could also offer that same compassion to myself. Like, what would that be like?
Oh, yeah. And I think one of the things we do is like, I wouldn't, I know that I'm saying this to myself, but like, I wouldn't
Yeah.
say this to my kids. I wouldn't say
Never.
this to my best friend if she
Yes.
came to me asking me,
Yeah.
for help or advice. So
Yeah.
be nice to yourself. And it's
Yeah.
really hard to do. It's really
I,
hard to do.
yeah.
But sometimes
Yeah.
when you just step back and think about it, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
let's start over. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about that. Like this idea of being nice to yourself is so hard to do.
Hmm.
Why do you think it's been so hard to do? And where are you at now in that journey of being nicer to yourself?
I'm getting better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not
Mm-hmm.
great.
Mm-hmm.
I was not necessarily, I wasn't, I didn't always have great self-esteem. I think a lot of that kind of came from my upbringing. That definitely
Mm-hmm.
stems from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it's taken me a lot as an adult to kind of understand that it's okay to be happy. It's okay to be unhappy. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's I deserve to treat myself with respect. I deserve to treat myself nicely. Um,
Yes.
these things don't always come easily, for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and I personally take a lot of reminding in that, and I
Yeah.
still, see my own psychologist who's
Yeah.
telling me, don't be so
Yeah.
hard on yourself. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we stumble and
Yeah.
we get back up. Um,
Yeah.
but it's taken me a very long time to kind of figure this out.
Yeah.
But I'm getting there.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that you said in our coaching call last week, which is why I was like, I really wanted to have you on the podcast and share your story is I've worked really hard to
Hmm.
feel proud. And, you know, it hasn't always been easy to feel pride. Even it's almost like And I think that a lot of us do this. We are conditionally proud. Like, if I'm doing well, then I get to be proud. And if I'm not doing well, then I don't. And that was probably one of the very first things that we coached on is what
Hmm.
would it be like to feel proud of yourself along the way, knowing that we are human and we will have moments that we go off or we overeat or we yell at our kids or we're not the way, like we're not being our ideal self the way we want to be. And at the same time, maybe it's okay to still be proud of just the way I'm showing up. What would you say has been your journey with pride?
Well, that's all very accurate, everything you just
Yeah.
said.
Yeah.
Um, and, I kind of came into this thinking I'm not really going to feel proud of myself until I meet my goal,
Yeah.
my ultimate end goal.
Yeah.
And I think I think it really took about until last week where it really clicked that
Yeah.
I'm proud of myself
Yeah.
for how far I've come already.
Oh, yeah.
And not just through weight loss, but in the fact
Yes.
that I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with the
Yeah.
process.
Mm-hmm.
And, there have been points where I've tripped on this process and I'm
Yeah.
getting back up and
Yeah.
I'm still here and I'm still working
Yes.
on it and I'm still doing a good job. And
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of myself for that.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, it's one of the things that I say on most consult calls. I don't know if you remember me saying this to you, but I want you to trip. I want you to have the weekend where you like forgot what you wanted to do. I
Hmm.
want you to have the vacation where you come back and you've gained a pound. Like, I want those experiences. And part of the reason is because if it was perfect the whole way, if you had just this linear, like I always do this, like, gesture with my hand. If you're seeing me
Hmm.
on video, it's like, if we just had perfect linear weight loss, then you would never have had to do the deeper work that we're talking about, which is befriending yourself every time you fall. And that's just not real life. Like, linear results are just not real life,
Yep.
right? So, what is the impact if you imagine, okay, I am a real human, I'm a ninja. I really think of all of us in this room as unstoppable women, but we're also human, which
Hmm.
means we're not perfect. We are going to put our best foot forward, and sometimes we won't. And like, what if we could just glean so much wisdom and love and compassion in the journey of it? What if that's all we had to do?
I think that's such an incredible thing to learn too.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
there's a lot of learning that goes on.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but I think we have to consider the fact that this is real life and
Hmm.
you're going to have a weekend where you don't stick with your plan or a week or,
Yeah.
even longer or a
Yeah.
vacation or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's okay to come back and be not necessarily I failed, but
Right.
be able to learn from it and say like,
Yeah.
okay, I did this. I didn't fail, but I did this.
Yes.
So what
Yes.
am I going to do now?
Yes, I love that so much because I think, and you tell me if this has been your experience, but all of the times that I have seen any of us fail, quote unquote, I'm putting that in quotes, like, we gain some weight or we overeat or we just forget our plan and we gain weight on the scale. There have been so many times I can think month after month, year after year, I'm like, F that, screw it. Like, why bother? And it's
Hmm.
that moment that turns into weeks, months, years, and the creep up just turns into pounds and pounds and pounds. And now all of a sudden we are left with just being so much heavier in our body, in our life. And the worst part is now we have created even more belief like, see, can't do it. So, how do you think for you, you transitioned that part, which is like every time you take a quote unquote fail and make it a problem,
Hmm.
versus what we're doing now, which is every time we have that, it's like, of course, this is not a problem. How am I going to learn from this? Like, how do you think you started to pivot your brain with that?
I think a lot of that comes from the daily work.
Yes.
So kind of, I like to lay in my bed at night and just like lay there
Mm-hmm.
still and quiet
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
think like, how does my body feel right now?
Yes.
And I think, it's very easy to turn something into a fail. Like today is Friday, and I typically
Yeah.
measure my week from Monday to Friday,
Mm-hmm.
and I did not meet my goal this week. I
Yes.
don't think of it as I
Mm-hmm.
failed in my goal this week.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I didn't get to where I wanted to be, and I'm a little bummed about that. But like so many other great things happened this week. And when I went to
Yeah.
bed last night and I laid in my bed,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm feeling pretty good right now.
Yes.
My body
Yeah.
feels pretty good right now. And
Mm.
especially the fact that I had my annual physical this morning
Oh my
You know,
gosh. Yes. Talk about full circle that you had your
yes,
annual visit again today. Yes.
I had it again today, and it was just like I came out of that feeling so much better. And so
Mm,
even though I haven't met my weight loss goal of where I ultimately want to be, and I didn't meet my
yes.
goal of this year, I think back to like, where was I last year?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's a world of difference in
Mm,
not just a number on the scale, but how I feel and how I feel about myself. So
yeah.
I think it's still definitely a learning process, but
Yeah.
realizing that I'm not necessarily failing at things and
Hmm.
finding how I can be constructive with those things is
Yes.
really helpful.
Yeah. And I think, for anyone that's listening, when Samantha refers to our daily work, I take my clients through daily and weekly work that really allows all of us in the room to give our brain direction on purpose, to remember what is deeply important to us while we also delight our bodies, like our whole bodies, our taste buds and our bodies. And I think that, one of the things that you said at the start was like, I like food. Like you and your husband, we like food,
Yep.
and yet you're losing weight while still delighting in food and enjoying your glass of wine. And you have Halloween candy in your house. And like, tell us about how you have been able to delight your whole self and also lose weight at the same time.
Um, a lot of it comes from training myself to eat slower.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because the slower I eat, the more
Yep.
I'm paying attention. And,
That's right.
I understand that I'm full way before,
Yeah.
or not even full, but like satiated,
Yeah.
um, before I used to be. So I'm just not
Yeah.
eating as much food as I used to be.
Right.
Um, there was a good amount of time where I had cut out flour and sugar.
Yeah.
They're back now, and I'm seeing
Yeah.
those results of them being back as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I have things to consider there. But, um, you know, my husband went to Costco probably a month ago, maybe more, and bought three gigantic bags of Halloween candy, and they have not been
Yep.
opened. And that is something that is
Yes.
huge for my house because normally my kids would have opened it, I would have opened it. I'd be sneaking
Yeah.
the cats up into my attic where I'm not
Yeah.
sneaking, but like bringing,
Oh, yeah.
like
Yeah.
coming up for work. I'd be sitting at my computer and my
Mhm.
garbage can would just be like Halloween candy galore. And then it's like, oh shoot,
Yes.
Halloween's here. Where's all the candy?
It's
Oops.
all gone.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But we haven't even opened them. And I'm kind of
Mm.
realizing I'm not, I don't need it. I don't need
Yes.
it. And I
Yeah.
don't want it.
Oh, I just love that because, whenever I think about you're losing weight and you're not feeling deprived or restricted. It's like the
Yeah.
Halloween candy is there and you're not muscling through. This is kind of what we talk about a lot. Like anytime I think historically that you or I have ever talked about like losing weight the old way, if we can call it the
Hmm.
old way, we've had to willpower our way, like muscle through the next plan, muscle through like needing to count the points or exercise. And what you're talking about is releasing willpower
Hmm.
and really just lowering your desire, like you're not even wanting it.
I also think that part of it is when you deprive yourself of something, you almost want it more, Okay,
Absolutely.
like my diet is going to be, I'm not eating chocolate anymore. And then, of course, the first thing
Yes.
you're going to want is chocolate. So
Yes.
knowing that if I wanted to eat Halloween candy right now,
Mm-hmm.
I could. And
Yeah.
it would be fine.
Yeah.
I'd probably see the results of it tomorrow and I'd feel it
Yeah.
tonight while I'm going to
Yeah.
sleep. And I think, probably wish I didn't eat that Halloween candy today, but here we
Mm-hmm.
are. So let's learn from
Mm-hmm.
it and do better tomorrow.
Mm. And like you said something pretty important around like you took a break from flour and sugar and
Hmm.
then you've incorporated it back. And I'm curious for you, and I think this is again like part of the continuing work. When we talk about weight loss and maintaining it, a lot of what I talk about inside Unstoppable is we want to lose weight the way that we want to maintain it.
Hmm.
Right? So we don't want to go on these crazy diets, lose all this weight, and then like go back to the old way of eating and gain it all back. What we want to do is become intentional and deliberate with the way that we eat and then start experimenting. Right. So, how has that been going for you when you think about reincorporating flour and sugar in ways that serve you versus like, do you feel like it's been a tough process to learn?
I think that sugar was very easy to learn.
Okay.
Um, Sugar to me is one of those things that when I realize I'm eating a lot of sugar, or I'm consuming a lot of sugar, in drinks or whatever,
Yeah.
I feel it very quickly on my body.
Okay. Yes.
I'm tired, I'm getting headaches.
Yep.
I'll be really energized and then I'm really tired.
Right.
And I also have kind of figured out what those triggers are. Um,
Yes.
Flour for me has been a lot harder. It
Yeah.
was an incredibly present thing in my diet before
Mm.
completely cutting it out of my diet for a little while.
Right.
And after kind of seeing those results of not having flour and sugar both at the same time,
Hmm.
it was great. I lost a lot of
Yeah.
weight very quickly, which was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But I did feel a little deprived, and I think that that was one
Yeah.
of the things that was hard for me.
Yeah.
Um, we tend to eat a lot of pasta, but
Hmm.
now I kind of look back and I'm like, all right, well, we don't need to have pasta 3 times a week. Maybe we have it 1 time a week, and maybe we have a
Right.
salad on the side so that I'm not eating as much pasta. I can still enjoy
Right.
it, but
That's right.
I'm not eating as much of it. Um,
Yes.
but I still
And so we're like
also feel
talking,
that.
yeah. And I think that that's such an important, it's like, what you're describing is kind of what I want everyone to hear. I will recommend for anyone that ever joins Unstoppable, I do recommend taking a break from flour and sugar for a few weeks to detox and to like stopping under its drunken influence. And then we go on the grandest experiment where we decide like, okay, if I incorporated it, how does my body feel? Forget just the scale. I remember when this was a few weeks ago, or maybe it was like 2 months ago, you had really taken the break and you talked about how you felt so much better, like the energy in your body, and you just felt lighter in your gut, like just that. Forget the scale. I mean, that's of
Right.
course nice to see the scale come down, but your clothes fitting, like fitting into dresses you had not worn in who knows how long,
Yeah. That was a long
right?
time, that dress.
Yes, that was amazing. And it wasn't the flour and sugar. I think it was your willingness to eat in a way that also felt good for your body. What do you think about
Yes.
that?
I think that that's very true. I always thought I ate fairly healthy.
Yeah.
I eat a pretty rich diet in vegetables, I guess I would say, or a
Yeah.
diet rich in vegetables. Um, and I like eating healthy. I like the feeling when I'm eating healthy, and I like
Mm-hmm.
the taste of healthy foods, but I also
Yeah.
really like the taste of unhealthy foods.
Right.
I like
Yes.
pretty much all foods.
Yeah.
But I think in evaluating how I feel,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it much clearer what foods not only I should and shouldn't be eating,
Mm-hmm.
but what foods do I really like. Like I like the
Yes.
taste of unhealthy foods, but I don't like the way that they make me feel. So the desire
Yes.
to eat them is less.
Yes. And I think that this was one of the, and you tell me if this feels true, like one of the biggest pieces over our time together was like really connecting with your body.
Hmm.
I think it was you who said like, "Oh, but I like it," and I was like, "Your taste buds like it, but how does your whole body like it, right?" And like, what if we, instead of saying or like my taste buds like it and my body doesn't like it, what would allow for both, right? Like if we could let our whole self delight in the way we
Hmm.
eat, then what would that be like? What would the impact of that be, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm growing and learning in
Yeah,
how food and what I
yeah.
eat makes me feel all around, not just my taste buds.
Yeah. And when you think about like, in forget just the physical weight that you've lost and how your clothes are fitting and all of that and your amazing annual today, what would you say are some of the intangible changes in your life, in your mind, in how you feel that you've experienced just from coaching and being in the Unstoppable group?
Well, I think I've definitely taken habits from this group that will
Hmm.
for sure stay with me, in not just in eating and portion control and
Yeah.
understanding my satiety and hunger levels,
Yeah.
but just kind of, I think something that has become very routine for me now is
Mm.
that stillness that I have at the end of the day, where like I'm
Yeah.
just kind of laying there and like let's evaluate how things went
Yes.
today. How do I
Yeah.
feel? Why do I feel this way? What did I
Mm.
do today that is making me feel this way?
Mm.
That is something that I've gotten very good at. Um,
Yes.
and will it's something that I want to take with me even if it
Yes.
doesn't become, or even if it doesn't maintain being so food focused.
Yeah.
But I think that that's something that I'll take with me
Hmm.
for as long as I possibly can.
Oh yeah. And I think even what you're referring to, it's like we're not even looking at the portion sizes of things anymore. We're talking
Yeah.
about like your body and when she's hungry and when she's comfortable. Like if we just honored that,
Yep.
right? And the impact of that is beyond the scale. The impact of that is just feeling so much more comfortable in this forever home that we
Yes.
have.
And let's keep it healthy because it's the only one we have.
That's right. And I think this is the other thing that we had talked about. Like, what is the lifetime impact of that? What do you think that is for you when you imagine that?
Well, I think that that was one of the motivating factors of why I wanted to join
Mm-hmm.
this group. And,
Mm.
thinking, okay, I could wait another 6 months and then join the group, but it's like in
Yeah.
6 months, I'm 6 months older.
Yeah.
And, I'm still pretty young. So if I can
Yeah.
learn to be healthy now and
Mm-hmm.
to make healthy choices for my body that are going to impact me going forward, why not start now? Um,
Yeah.
I also think it's great for my kids. They're at ages where they're very impressionable. And so
Yeah.
even if they're just watching me make good choices, they're still eating the
Mm.
candy. They don't care. And that's
Mm.
fine.
Mm-hmm.
They're eight
Yeah.
years old. But
Yeah.
understanding that there are healthy choices to be made and it's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily by counting calories or,
Right.
doing things
Mm-hmm.
that aren't necessarily there for longevity.
Yeah.
Um, I think is an important impact on their
Yeah.
lives as well.
Oh, yeah. And tell me whether this feels true, but like even just allowing your inner voice to go from the self critical, like, judging or criticizing every quote unquote fail to what are we going to learn from this and being more compassionate and patient with yourself. How do you think that that impacts them and like what they're going to learn from that?
Well, I hope they learn a lot from it, because
Yeah,
that's something that I did not learn as a child.
that's right.
So, the I think lack of judgment is a huge thing. I've definitely heard judgment in my own kids, where you'll
Yes,
hear, even if it's just like something, they do poorly on a homework assignment, like you don't want to hear
right.
your own kids say, like, I'm so dumb, like
Yes.
something
I
like that.
mean,
Like,
of
let's
course.
learn about that now and figure it out.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
as long as I keep positive self-talk, even if it's internal, if I'm not expressing it outwardly,
yes.
they still pick up on that. So,
Every little grain. I mean, this is the one thing. I know this podcast is not about parenting, but like I kind of share a lot around even in our calls like around, a lot of my personal coaching with my son. It's like even if I'm not saying things out loud to my kids, if I have an inner critic, if I'm always criticizing myself in my own mind, they pick up on that vibe and they will start to mirror it back to us.
yep,
And when we start to soften that and understand ourselves and like really do the work that we're talking about, they get to glean from that too.
definitely.
It's so
They are
huge.
like little mirrors.
Oh yeah. So when you think about like someone listening to this podcast and they have just been bitten by the bug, they feel this like they know that coaching is for them. They know that they want to lose weight, but they're hesitating and they're thinking like, should I do this now? Maybe I should wait. What would you say to another working mom who's like doing all of the things but also wants to lose weight? What would you tell them about joining this group?
I think I would say really consider why, if you want to wait,
Yeah.
consider why you want to wait.
Mm,
Um, make sure that you're ready to put in the work mentally.
yeah.
Um, and I think just be open to it because
Yeah.
it's not just a physical process of
Mm-mm.
losing weight. It's not like you're hopping on your stationary bike and you're just
Yeah.
the weight's gonna melt off.
Yeah.
It is a challenge and you have to put in the work, but
Yeah.
when it really comes to it, we're what, 4 months in.
Yeah.
Um, it's not that hard. It's
That's
really not
it's
that
not
hard.
that hard.
It feels
Can
really
you speak to
challenging at
that
the
for a second?
beginning.
Yeah. It's like that piece, right? So like I think that this is so important for people to hear. Like there is work. I'm
Yeah,
going to be teaching you a process. It will be different than what maybe you have been doing. And it is an immersive experience, right? Like having a weekly check in and doing the daily work. But how is doing that not so hard? Like, what would you say your experience with that has been?
I think it's on my mind all the time, but
Mm-hmm.
the majority of the difficult habits, I would say, that I'm trying to
Yeah.
overcome, um, have to do with just reminding myself of things,
Mm-hmm.
and if I went into this thing, like I'm reminding
Yeah.
myself to
Yeah.
be proud of myself, or it's not that big of a deal, or are you full? Are you hungry?
Mm-hmm.
Are you actually hungry when you're picking up this food
Right.
to put it in your mouth? You know,
Yeah.
that is, it sounds silly, but it's such an easy
Yes.
thing to do, but it's also the
Yes.
hardest.
Yes. It's like these little moments that maybe beforehand we didn't think mattered.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, this moment doesn't matter, or I'll start again tomorrow, or like this one just isn't a big deal. It's actually those small moments that are simple, small moments that just compound. And I think that that's why so many of my clients will say, like, when they start losing weight and they see the weight come off, they're like, actually, this is actually simple. It's, yeah, I'm doing something new. And it's also, it is actually simple.
It makes a lot of sense.
And
Like,
it makes a lot of
it
sense.
makes a lot of sense. But
Yeah.
I really think the hardest part of the entire thing is carving out that 1 hour a week from
Yes.
my workday to say, okay,
Yeah.
I'm getting on this phone call. And
Yeah.
then when something else pops up,
Yeah.
like I need to make sure that
Yeah.
I am the priority. So,
Yes.
whatever else that may be. And I
Yeah.
will be honest, I've had a work conflict come up and I've missed the call
Yeah.
and then I'm bummed
Yeah.
about it. So
Yes.
I need to remember, I'm doing this for myself
Mm.
and I need to maintain that level of priority. So if
Mm-hmm.
something else comes up that I can move, I'm going to.
That's right. And I think that that's, one of the big things that I will always share. It's going to be part of just like the energy that I want to put out into the universe for any woman, mom, working lady hearing this is we cannot wing what matters to us anymore. And what, I think that we've talked about this even in our coaching calls that we're so used to our like prioritizing our kids and our families and our work and we want to do amazing for all of these pieces of our life. We have just been winging it for ourselves. And what you're talking about is like we're not winging it anymore. We are putting ourselves on our own calendars and we are just starting to reflect what deeply matters with these choices that we make. And, I think that this is also part of the thing. Like when we're busy, it's okay that you miss an occasional call, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes life is happening. And that's why we have the call replays like available to come back and listen to and like, geek out on whenever you
Yep.
like happen to miss a call.
Yeah, I agree. And it's always funny because I'll occasionally go back and watch a call that
Yeah.
I've been on and there's so much of like, oh, I don't like to hear my own voice or I don't want to
Yeah.
see myself on a video. But it's like that was a really important moment and I need to replay that. And I can't just replay it in
Yes.
my mind. I need to actually see it.
Yes. And I think sometimes what happens is like, when you're getting coached, you're so in getting coached that going back and having the ability to watch your coaching is huge because you start to see it totally differently after the fact.
Yes. And I have like post-its next to me. I don't write things down, but I'll just like
Yeah.
write down random words. And then
Mm,
I'll look at it later and be like, I don't know what this means. So
yeah.
being able to like go back and see and be like, oh yes, that is what
Yeah.
I meant by, commitment or
Yeah.
whatever. Any random
Yeah.
word.
Yeah. And I think that probably commitment's probably coming because we recently have been talking about how we don't ever want to use motivation to lose weight. And we know that's because Monday morning's motivation is gone by like Tuesday night or Wednesday afternoon.
Monday night.
What we want to do, yeah, Monday night. There you go. Monday morning's motivation. Everybody, listen to me. If your Monday morning's motivation is gone by Monday night, Samantha's here to tell you you
It's
don't need
okay.
motivation. You don't need motivation to lose weight. That's like such a big piece of it. All you need is commitment. And you learn that inside Unstoppable. So good. Samantha, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And I think that one of the biggest takeaways that I'm having from what you're sharing is that you could have had whatever experience and lived experience coming into this, and it is all taken care of when you learn this work. It's simple, it's work, but it's doable. What would you say
Definitely
to that?
doable. Very
Yeah.
doable.
Yeah. So good, Samantha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.